briefly
So,
stay here
hi,
in this
I'm
state
Kathy,
for a little while
and
longer.
can you guys mute people, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Be patient with yourself.
Yep. So welcome to Orange Audubon's Bird Chat for April 1st. We're so glad you decided to join us, and we hope that you will enjoy our program about a migratory hotspot that's in our area. Oops. Okay, why is this not going? Hang on. There we go. So we're going to have announcements of Plant of the Week, a mystery bird, and then our program on Mead Botanical Gardens with the Bird Chat team. Upcoming programs next week, we're also going to feature a spring migration hotspot. It's not directly where our Audubon is, but it's within 2 hours. Port DeSoto, it's an amazing place. And April 15th, we're having a program on birds and hurricanes with Ken Meyer. April 22nd is our monthly program on J-Watch with Maria Zondervan. And April 29th, we're featuring Oakland Nature Preserve, another local great place to bird with Jackie Raleigh. And she's done an incredible amount of restoration work there. Okay, so those of you from other states, things in Florida might be a little different from where you are. We are having very limited field experiences with our Orange Audubon. So we do have a survey. So if you're local and you want to join the survey, the next one is on the 10th at 7:15 a.m. That's my email. This is one of the wonderful birds you might see. We have nesting Bachmann sparrows there, and they are singing now. So even if you're not real experienced, more eyes, more better. So join the survey, but sign up soon because the numbers that we can allow are limited. And we do require masks and social distancing. Our bird-a-thon, we need to talk about the bird-a-thon. So on April 10th or 11th, you pick a 24-hour period. Pick a 24-hour period. And as many species as you can. You need to be in Florida. You can go anywhere in Florida that you'd like to go. And what we're trying to do is all our members go birding, and then we compile a list to see how many species we can get. And then if people in our club and other people that want to help support our Audubon, they pledge a certain amount per bird seen or a flat rate. So to learn more, check out our Oasis newsletter that just came out today, or email me. And upcoming, we have a deadline, April 15th, of the Nature Photo Contest, the Sure Talk Native Photo Contest. This is an amazing contest. We have all levels, youth and amateur and professional. And the requirement is the photos need to be taken in Florida, and they have to feature all native things and no man-made items in the background. So it's a real challenge because you got to make sure you don't have those power lines or grass that's not native and all those things. So go on our website to learn more, and we hope lots of you enter. And we'll have a very special program in June with the winners.
Now, Kathy, somebody did have a comment
Yes.
on the bird-a-thon.
Yes.
Cindy Monell wanted to know, do you stay in the same area for the bird-a-thon? So I assume she means county, or?
No, you can go wherever you want. We really like it when people go far, because what we're trying to do is find lots of species. So one year that we did really well, we had someone that was in South Florida and got all the parrots. Now, the birds do need to be countable on the ABA list. That's the one thing. So you can't go to the zoo and, the swans at the park. No, but, if they're established wild species, like non-native, like house sparrows and stuff like that count. So yeah, more places better. And it's great if you can get a birding buddy and be socially distanced and have a lot of fun. Some people spend the whole day. They go out the whole day. Okay.
And because it's a fundraiser, if you can get sponsors, that's half the purpose of it. All right, I'll do Plant of the Week. This is a plant we're seeing in bloom out at the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive now. And it's butterweed in the family Asteraceae, the daisy family. And in the fall, you can go to the next one. Well, here's its distribution. It's pretty widespread. And it's a native and it's an obligate wetland plant. It needs wetland. So it's not one that you're going to likely grow for your yard. And it's an annual, but it does seed in. So that's why you see those vast areas of it at the Wildlife Drive next. And it's wonderful for pollinators. It's a really good pollinator plant. So we have a lot of fun with the burr marigolds in the winter, late fall and winter. But this is a different yellow flower, the butterweed. Okay, that's it.
Okay, so now it's time for our mystery bird, and this is where you're going to make guesses in the chat, and Susan's going to monitor that. So this is one that we saw a couple of weeks ago on the Wildlife Drive at the very beginning, and the one that you're guessing is the one that there's 5 of and not the single. The single is not the mystery bird. So sometimes they like to perch on the wire. Here's a photo from All About Birds, one in flight. Do we have any guesses yet? And I'm going to play.
You have some guesses.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think when everybody saw that one red one, they kind of started guessing barn swallow, and then you switched it. But Lori did say northern roughwing.
Yes, that's it. So this is a northern rough-winged swallow. And here's some interesting facts. So this is, we got lucky the day that we saw them. Someone else spotted and said, oh, I think it was actually Sam. So there's swallows up on the wire. So they were being very cooperative, because usually when you see them, they're in flight and they're flying fast, and it's really hard to get on them. So at least here in Florida, other places I know they're a lot easier to see. So they were first up on the wire, and then by one of the lakes there, the ponds, a couple of them decided to perch on some wood and some sticks, and got this little photo. Very, very handsome little birds. As you can see, they're brownish on the back. They're very buffy on the front. They don't have any kind of marking on their neck like a bank swallow. Here's how they got their name. I wonder who figured this one out. So they do have on their outer wing feathers, they have small hooks or points on the leading edges. So if you ran your finger along the edge of the feather from the base to the tip, it feels like you're touching a rough file. You would find them over lakes, ponds, and rivers. They often do mix in with other species. So as you're seeing swallows this time of year, it's always good to look through all of them, because you never know what swallows might be mixed in. Interesting fact about this swallow, that they molt some of their feathers while they're flying, which is not normal for most swallows. And it takes them about 100 days to molt. Like most swallows, they're insectivores. Their flight is a little different than the other swallows. They're a little bit slower, more deliberate, fluttery wing beats. During glides, they tend to hold their wings straight out from their body with less of a bend in the wing like a bank swallow would have. So of course, in Florida, bank swallows are not real common either. So this is their distribution. It shows that they breed in Florida, but we in Central Florida, they're a little hard to find. So be interesting to find out where they are breeding. So now I'd like to introduce one of our special guests, Larry Martin. He is Orange Audubon Society's liaison to Mead Botanical Gardens. He's been doing it for quite a number of years, and he knows Mead Gardens like the back of his hand. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Larry for a few minutes to talk about Mead Gardens.
Okay, welcome everybody. I have never done the bird chat before, so give me a thing here. I'm going to give a brief thing of background about Mead the man, and Mead the Botanical Garden, kind of give you a background of how it got to be a botanical garden and all that kind of stuff. So I don't have any pictures or anything, so I'll try to make it pretty fairly quickly. Theodore Mead, the garden was set up as an honor to Theodore Mead, who was a well-known naturalist and horticulturalist and all around interested in birds and butterflies and all that kind of stuff. He was born in 1854, and he got interested in nature and stuff. I think he found an interesting caterpillar in his father's garden when he was 5 years old and became fascinated with nature ever since. So he first came to Florida with his family as a teenager in 1869. And just for a visit, I think they went to Eustis, or Enterprise, I think I read. And then he went back, he studied birds and butterflies in Colorado and Europe and collected plants and all that kind of stuff. And he finally moved to Florida. He moved to Oviedo in the 1880s and bought some land there and started growing plants and collecting and hybridizing plants and birds and butterflies and all that stuff. And he was also a pillar of the community, and a scout leader. And he became a mentor to a whole generation of young men who were interested in nature and birds and plants. And when he died in 1936, two of his students, Jack Connery and Edwin Grover, they wanted to find some place where they could set up his plants and someplace to honor his memory. And Edwin Grover was a professor at Rollins. And so they were looking for someplace nearby Rollins, and they found some land that became Mead Botanical Garden, and they got people to donate it, and the city donated some, and they did some improvements and set up paths and all that, some greenhouses and things. And they opened officially on January 14th, 1940. So, and you can still see, if you look down in the southeast corner of the park, of the garden, they like to call it a garden, not a park. You can see the old pillars where the main gate, where the entrance to the place used to be. There was a turnstile there, and you can still see the two concrete pillars where the turnstile was. And there was a little gatehouse there and three greenhouses. And so, yeah, they ran into some financial problems. And in 1953, they ceded the whole thing to the city with the stipulation that it had to stay as a garden and a natural spot. They could never develop it into anything else. So it's been that way ever since, though for a while it really became kind of run down and overgrown and all that kind of stuff, and wasn't really a very pleasant place. And in the 1980s, a group of locals, interested people, started to get together, the Friends of Mead, and started working with the city to clear it up and make some improvements and try to get rid of a lot of the invasive plants and stuff like that. And they became the Mead Botanical Garden, Inc., to whom I am the liaison. And before the pandemic, I used to go to all the meetings and stuff, but it's been a while now. But so it's pretty good. It's 48 acres of and a mixed habitats of sandhill and basic swamp, wetlands, and there's a creek and a pond. And so that's one of the reasons why there's so many different birds in there. And I became a liaison maybe 6 years ago, something like that, 6-7 years ago. And I think I've helped influence. I think when I first started working with them, they weren't particularly that interested in the nature part. The wetlands and stuff was something they didn't really pay that much attention to. There was one woman who was on the board. She told me one time that nature's okay as long as she didn't have to look at it, which is not exactly a good attitude to take if you're in charge of 48 acres of a natural park. So anyway, so I've been trying to, I kind of nudged them toward, improving the native parts and helping the birds. And I think they've appreciated it now. So I think I've done a pretty good job. So anyway, that's about it. I don't know if anybody has any other questions or anything.
Why don't you go to the next slide, Kathy?
Okay, so thank you, Larry. I'm going to turn it over to Susan. She's going to talk about why Mead is a migratory bird hotspot, and then we're going to start going on a tour around the park.
All right, so for those weeks in migration in the spring and fall, you're going to see a lot of birders in Mead because it's really attracts a lot of the songbirds. They're kind of taking that route up the Appalachian, up to US, going up to the northeastern US and Canada after moving from their wintering grounds. And while they're going up, Mead is this really nice green area in the middle of the suburban area you can hear water running. It's got insects, berries to eat. So it does become kind of a migrant trap. It has open water. It's got other ponds. It's got little running rivers. It's got swamp, wetland areas. I shouldn't say swamp, but wetlands, uplands with oaks and pines. And I think the last, the eBird list said that there's 195 bird species have been documented at Mead on eBird. And a lot of those warblers, 23 species of warblers, a few stay through, but a lot of them are the ones on the way through. They're kind of using it as a stopping grounds, and they may stay several days before moving north.
Oh,
So go ahead and we'll go to the next one.
when the plant of the month, whatever it was, that butterweed
Uh-huh.
for the place along the boardwalk. It's really beautiful this time of year.
Oh, good.
Oh, there we go. So Larry at the Orange Audubon Society holds bird walks every Saturday in April and October to kind of go with migration. We do currently have a COVID, limitation of participants, and you must wear a mask. But if you are interested in those, you can go ahead and email Larry. And I think, Larry, you take reservations, a week in advance?
Yeah, I'd like to start on Mondays before the Saturday.
Okay, starting on Monday.
Personal thing, I don't have to worry about it over the weekend.
Yeah.
You're
All right.
already full for this Saturday.
This weekend, we are
Tomorrow.
full, yes.
On Saturday.
So Mead, so those acres, I kind of put up this map here to kind of show you the orientation of the park. You're coming in on the left at the entrance, and that driveway comes in and makes a loop. And then you have the different areas, like in the left upper corner is the bee gardens, what they call the pit, some of the, like a lot of the gardens and greenhouse area. Then we kind of move over, there's a boardwalk in the upper right. And then all along, there's a creek that goes all along the side of the park, and all of that is just great habitat for birds. There's also a pond and what they call a little island, because it kind of gets separated between the land by the river and the inlets going out into the river and the pond. So it kind of makes it a little island. Then there's also a front area with real tall pines. So that's kind of really nice. So, and some of you can see we put in some of the birds that I photographed. So they're not the best bird photographs, but they're real interesting, fun things to see there. So we can go to the next. So one of the first things that you usually like to hit on migration is the mulberry tree, because those mulberries are going to attract a lot of the birds. These are a couple of the birds that I took pictures of in the mulberry tree and around that area. So the mulberry tree is located, if you're going past the restrooms, there's a little road. And if you kind of keep taking that, it kind of wraps around towards the pavilion. And there's this big tree in the back. Oh, we can go to the next. You can go to the next slide. On the way, you're going to pass through like a native plant garden. So you're going to see a lot of neat butterflies, bees. You'll probably see some flycatchers, wrens, catbirds. There's all kinds of different birds, depending on the season, that you'll see as you're walking towards the mulberry tree. And you can continue walking, and we'll go. And the next thing that you'll come to, we can go to the next slide, is the pit. They call it looking into the pit. So this is just an overlook looking down, and at the bottom is a little pond. This mallard mottled hybrid that on the left I just took the other day. So he was sitting in that pond. But there might be waterfalls, herons, egrets in that little pond, all kinds of different things. There's a lot of like like snags and little trees that are going to have your raptors, your flycatchers, your woodpeckers. And they're going to be real easy to see because you're looking across this big open space onto those snags. And a lot of times they'll be sitting there. But there's also at the bottom, there's a lot of the little scrub, you know, those painted buntings, love those little tixie. They're going to be there. You'll see catbirds, wrens, thrashers. They're all going to be down along the bottom there. So at any time, of course, you never know what you're going to see, but those are some of the things that we've seen in those locations. Next. So this is kind of a picture of the mulberry tree. So in this, there's also a little pond. As the way we're looking head on to the right is a little pond. Sometimes it's more full than others, but it usually will have yellow throats. Actually, I think we saw some buntings in there the other day. Obviously palm and yellow rumps in that season. One of the, I think last year, the big bird we saw was the Philadelphia vireo, which is on that left, bottom left. And he's kind of stayed for a little bit, which was pretty nice. It was kind of a nice special bird for us. And then raptors will also come sometimes and kind of mess up your birding because they'll come and sit right on the top. There's a little old kind of a dead snag right behind that mulberry tree, and they might sit right there and just to be a pain to kind of limit those birds. Next. And these are just a few of the birds that we've seen in that area. Cedar waxwings, just like I think a week ago, were, I don't know, they might still be there in quantities. I don't know when they're leaving, but they're up in there. Goldfinch, the yellow throats. And then when the migration starts, I've seen black-throated blues, Redstarts in that tree. So there's another tree too in that same area. There's a lot of little trees, and a lot of times they'll hop from one tree to the other in a feeding, little feeding flock, and just finding one of those flocks is really good. So we can go to the next. So then if you keep walking from the tree, you're going to go to the butterfly garden. So the butterfly garden is going to have obviously a lot of butterflies and flowers and plants, but that does attract, like the hummingbirds will be in there. There's a lot of big oaks there. So you're going to see the woodpeckers, any of the birds that are going to love the tall oaks, black and whites. Feeders are set up. The feeders are real popular with the buntings, house finches, obviously cardinals and tufted titmice. You never really know what you're going to see. You kind of have to watch and see who comes to the feeders. But it is it's kind of a nice little area. There's a small mulberry tree too. So as that one grows, we'll probably get even more and more birds in there eating those berries. But I'm hoping that it becomes a very popular spot when its migration starts a little bit more this year. Next. Okay, so then after you go kind of through the butterfly garden, you're going to come to the boardwalk. So the boardwalk goes over those wetlands areas. It was rebuilt, so it is a little bit of different configuration, but it still kind of goes through that wetland type area where you might see thrush, ovenbirds, obviously wrens are in there. And you never know, a lot of the migratory birds will kind of get back in this area too. So it's kind of a nice little area. You'll see rabbits, I think I see a rabbit every time I go back there in that area. So, and that's kind of that wetlands habitat. So those type of birds that like that will be back in there. And next. So one of the other things that I did want to kind of point out, even though it's kind of like not a specific area, it's a type of tree. And those are the trees that are drilled by the sapsuckers. So sapsuckers will pre-drill trees with the horizontal like holes, and then they'll come back and lap up the sap and any trapped insects because it has a little brush-tipped tongue. And these trees are kind of found throughout the park. There's some on the east end of the parking lot. There's a creek side behind the office is a tree. There's one near the barred owl tree. And there's the one on the way to Warbler's Corner. There's probably even more, but those are just kind of nice if you know where they are and kind of scout them out. when that season comes and the sapsuckers return, you can kind of know where to look to find a sapsucker. So kind of a really good thing to know. She was asking what kind of trees did the sapsuckers choose? I'm not really sure because there's like, I mean, one of the trees was a tababui. They're kind of all different ones. I think one's an oak. Larry, do you have any input on that? Like what type of tree? I think it's any kind of tree would have sap. So whatever they feel like drilling.
Yeah, I've seen them even tapping onto palm trees, which I don't understand, but still.
Yeah.
Susan,
So-
sweet gum is a good one for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the trees that I've seen there at Mead don't seem to be any specific one. It's just any that have those holes in. So, all right. And now we're going to move to the picnic area and bike path with Kathy.
Yes, okay, well, thank you. And I want to mention at this point, if you've never been to Mead Gardens, that the birds can show up in any of the areas. You know, they're not all, you know, like you're not going to just see a redstart in one particular area. They can be found all over, you know, and as they've just arrived, they might, you know, be in one area, then they move to another area. So it's fun to go, you know, walk around and look. And what's neat is the people, the birders there are usually very helpful. And, you know, you can see what's being seen in what particular place. So this is when you first drive in the garden entrance. I'll put my mouse on here. This is the area off to the right. This was originally sandhill, and there's some restoration happening. Deborah's going to talk about that. And so these are nice tall pine trees. Redstarts definitely could be in there. Often pine warblers are in there, and we often will get feeding flocks. So it's a good place. You just never know what you're going to see. You're going to hear that a lot, you know, and some days are like amazing and some days are a little quiet, but there's always something interesting. So definitely check out the pine area. And I'm going to show you some more things with the pine area. So it's a good place for raptors. There's a Cooper's hawk. Very recently, like this was my first of the season. No, it wasn't. It's my second of season. Swallowtail kites are often seen here. So if you're visiting Florida, this is pretty consistent that we get some flyovers. And actually the last few weeks, the flyovers have been very low. And so it's a lot of fun to see those birds. There are some tortoises and turtles there. There's some gopher tortoise burrows, which are protected, but it's neat to see those. There's a wood stork sitting up in a pine tree, which is kind of different. There is a bike path that goes through. So if you do go walking around and you're looking at nature, you're looking at birds, be aware, don't stand in the middle of the bike path, which some of us have done, because, you know, some of the bikers are going through at a pretty fast clip. So you don't want to stand in the middle there. You can see that picture in the upper right is looking, some of the trees are pretty good size. So this is one of the areas where you can sometimes find Baltimore Orioles. You often find them on the mulberry, but there is, how do we say it, tababuya tree. It's not native, but there's a whole lot that were planted in Central Florida way back. They are beautiful, but not native, but the Orioles do like them, both the Baltimore and the Orchard Orioles. So I know that photo was taken maybe a couple weeks ago. I'm still looking for them, but you can sometimes find them there. And, you know, the Northern Parula, they'll often be zipping up. They like the Spanish moss. They nest in there. So that's another good place to see those. And nesting hawks have been in the area. This was taken last year of red-tailed hawk nest. And the picnic area, there's also some picnic tables and such. And where yeah, these are my photos. That not the best picture of an indigo bunting, but when I've seen them at Mead, I usually see them in the grass, which is kind of interesting. So you always want to look around. You want to look up all the trees. Often tanagers are in there, and you can find something like Cape May warblers. Last year, they liked that Talibia tree, though the blooming of the cycle is different. So every year is different, but that's another thing you can look for. This I took last year. We had this amazing, it was a young male summer tanager. So it was between yellow and red and just way up high in those pines. So you had to just kind of keep looking and be patient, and you could see something like that. And then, so on the other side of the clay pit, Susan showed you looking down to where you looking down from the mulberry tree. Well, there's paths that go down to the clay pit. And this was a Scarlet Tanager that last year on one of the really good days, we had several Scarlet Tanagers around, and one was right in a tree right by the water. And that picture kind of shows you the paths. It's a little bit steep. If it's rained a lot, it'll get muddy in there. People have seen things like prothonotary warblers in there. We had a lot of worm-eating warblers in there one year. So you just never know what's going to show up. So next. So this is by the greenhouse and the formal gardens. And this is where I've seen the yellow-billed cuckoo a few times. And the yellow-billed cuckoos, they kind of move around. So we've seen them, on the island, which Sam is going to talk about. And we've seen them, off the boardwalk. So, and they're hard to spot. If you've never seen one, they're tough unless they're flying or they're calling. Oh, and also up here in one of the trees, there's a really big beehive. So then there's Alice's Pond, which varies in depth. A couple years ago, it almost was dry, but we've had a good amount of rain, so it's pretty full. Another good place to see the Cooper's hawk. One year it was just like taking a bath when I went over there. You just never know. And then we do have some resident wood ducks. Matter of fact, last week I saw them eyeing the wood duck box there. So that's a good place to see wood ducks if you've never seen them. And then I want to mention there's a garden house that when you go in the parking lot, you see it. And one day I met Susan, and it was like rainy and not great, but it wasn't raining real hard. And I was there and saw a black Burnian warbler. You just, stuff shows up when you don't expect it. So it's always pays to look. And this is a female Cape May. So even on days that the weather's not so great, you can still find some treasures. So I'm going to let Deborah talk about the native plant garden.
Okay, just a couple words it's a wonderful project by the Florida Native Plant Society chapter locally here, the Tarflower chapter. They are trying to recreate the sandhill habitat, which used to be there in the upland part of Mead. And as a model, they're looking to Wekiwa Springs State Park, which is well-burned sandhill. And so they have really nice labels and quite a variety of plants. And if anybody's into local and into plants, they would love your help.
Okay, I think we're at Sam.
Hey, everybody. So I was trying to put this together so that a lot of people forget about Warbler Corner or don't know about it if you've never been there. And like Larry said, kind of where the old entrance to the park was back in the day, it's the southeast corner, like the farthest corner, and actually outside the chain link fence that you may think is a perimeter. Thank you for whoever has the mouse on that. But yeah, that corner back there is awesome. It goes up against the creek. I was joking with Paul Huber the other day that all those houses along the edge of the creek there, I want to pool some money and give them all bird feeders and bird seed for Christmas and leave it on their front doorstep. So hopefully they put them all along the backside of the creek and we can all see them from the park. But anyway, I digress. For Warbler Corner, I'm just going to run through this map real quick. Basically, what I do a lot when they used to, I don't know if they're still locking the gate. I'm assuming they are, but it's usually open when I get there in the morning for the main gate. But when it was still with the time change, if we were going there super early looking for owls or anything, you could come in and park along Lakeshore there on the outside, and there's that path, and you can walk in and I always parked there because I would start at Warbler Corner and it was always dark, and I would, be unhappy that I couldn't see anything, do the rest of the park. But it also made me go back and check Warbler Corner again as the last thing on my way out. And I always discovered, usually I would get some stuff then, and it was great. So anyway, you can park there along the street if you don't choose to go in the front, or if you get there early and the gate's locked. So from Warbler Corner, if you follow the creek down, basically all along there, that little section where the mouse is now is CC's garden. And I learn stuff like this every day when I run into Larry and Barb Taylor and Bob Sokola and Karen and a lot of these people that have birded this place a lot longer than I have. So that little spot there, there's been hermit thrush in there lately, which has been really good. And then, like Kathy said, when you get to the island, you got a concrete bridge, then the island, then the wooden bridge, and then you go behind the garden club. And basically, I'm telling you all these spots because when you are looking at eBird, or if you've never been there and you talk to somebody and they go, oh, it's at WC, or you see it in their eBird report, forever I had no idea what WC was. And then finally it's like, oh, are you going to Warbler Corner? And I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. So I'm basically just running through this map really fast. So if you run into somebody like, oh, it was on the island, or it was by the concrete bridge, or it's in WC. And the garden club, like behind the garden club, is super great. And then as you go on down, the small boardwalk is just a little tiny boardwalk just past the backside of the big main boardwalk. So, and then the old broken boardwalk is the end of the original boardwalk. So anyway, so next slide, back to Warbler Corner. I'll start there. I'm not one to post nests, and I don't think I didn't post this picture till way after these hummingbirds were gone. But we had a really cool, not very high hummingbird nest there for a long time. And it was one of those kind of known secrets. It's completely gone now, but they do nest in there, and it's really cool. And we've had them throughout the park. So it's a cool thing if you've never seen it, and to just, kind of remind you to take your time and look up and look around. So next slide. One of my favorites, the hooded warbler. Good photo by Lori. We had sightings in Warbler Corner in the fall, and again, as you come out and you get towards CC's garden, what we call it, where I mentioned the hermit thrush right now, but just when you come through there, actually where the turnstiles are, I think that's where Larry actually told me about them, because there was a hooded warbler that hung out in there for a week or so in the fall. So that's a really cool spot. And again, you're just the kind of the area I'm telling you about goes from that southeast corner all the way along the creek. So next slide. All right, so when you get to the island, if you've never been there, and for people from out of state, and it's hard to look at on a map, but that's the concrete bridge in the upper left-hand corner I was telling you about. And then when you go across the island, that's the bridge that Kathy also had a picture of, which everyone calls the wooden bridge. So in between there is the island, and we've had amazing birds there. Everything you can think of as far as good warblers, hermit thrushes, wood thrush, gray cheek thrush, Swainson's thrush, and it's just great. And the magnolia warbler there's a black and white. But the island is really good as far as if it's super wet, it gets really flooded. It was so wet in the fall, and just past the wooden bridge is the garden club. And I got a text from somebody, and I was on the other side wearing knee-high rubber boots because it was so wet. And I can't remember what bird it was, but they were like, come to the garden club, come. And I went running across, and literally the water was over my knees, inside my boots. I did get the bird. I can't remember what it was, but it was good. So anyway, so once you come across the wooden bridge, next slide, please. Yeah, so there's more from the island. Last year we had a Chuck Will's widow, which is there on the left. And it sat there like that all day for about 8 hours. And it was just bananas. Again, it was maybe chest level, about 30 feet out. And I can't remember who spotted it first. It might have been Mary Soul. But it was just a really cool bird, because you hear them down here, but you never see them, or very rarely. I think that's the second one I've ever seen. The prothonotary there hangs out was by the concrete bridge on the cypress knees. There's a Swainson's thrush at the bottom. Next slide. So yeah, once you come across the island and go behind the garden club, the creek really picks up in there. And I mean, it was the land of black-throated blues, the Louisiana water thrush down there on the right, black-throated green on the top right, the Philadelphia vireo in that bottom left corner was originally spotted behind the garden club. There's an ovenbird there. They're a great little bird. And then just last week, just past the garden club, I decided I would take my time and look and try to, see what I could see instead of just rushing through, and stumbled upon eastern whipperwill, which is the bird at the top left. And I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. So that's only the second bird of that species that I've seen. And the other one was actually over by the clay pit in the fall that Susan mentioned. So like I said, very diverse birds. And when, you look at it from a bird's eye view, no pun intended, but you've got all of these houses and hospitals and I-4 and all this, mills, all these roads around it. But then you've just really got this amazing oasis that we're super lucky. Doesn't cost you a dime. Obviously, they take donations, which is great. And all the volunteers there do a really good job. And we're really fortunate to have this place. So next slide, please. I don't know where I'm at. Yeah, that was it for me. But like I said, just take your time through there. I mean, it's amazing. And I would say 99% of the people there are super nice and super helpful. And it's always, hey, what are you seeing? Did you see anything? Or, and most everybody shares stuff, but hopefully from that little map, and you can go back and look at it, we'll kind of let you know if you see stuff on eBird, as far as when people say the island or the concrete bridge or the wooden bridge or the garden club or any of the other spots they mentioned as well. So that's it.
Great.
Okay, so Susan, do we have any questions? And I'm going to put it back. I'll just leave it on this picture because it's so pretty.
There we go. Yeah, we have a question. Oh, Sam, looks like he already read it.
Well, it's
Early morning.
Yeah, basically she asked, what's the luckiest time of day for you? But Larry, you might want to jump in there. You live close, and I know you kind of bird it all day, and I've gone back in the afternoons, but I prefer the mornings too. But what do you think, Larry?
Well, I usually get there in the mornings, and I'm doing my bird walks in the mornings, but I'm more of a morning person. So, but sometimes I've gone there in the late afternoon, gets awful kind of busy too, as the, gets evening. But middle of the day slows down sometimes, but mornings or late afternoons, I'd say, would be your best shot.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, Jean was asking if you could put the map back up so she could take a picture.
Sure. Hang on, let me go back. And I did see, I was just looking at the chat that someone asked about sponsoring for the Bird-A-Thon. You can go to our website or you can email me and we'll make sure you can sponsor. We would love that.
Oh, yeah, I missed that. Sorry.
That's all right. That's okay.
Sam, since you had,
Terrence was asking, are woodstocks there year round or just a specific time of year?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Oh,
I've only ever seen wood storks. I mean, you'll see them in the creek, but the majority are flyovers. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah, they're not there. It's not the best place to go look if you wanted to see when I'd
No.
go more.
But I have
direct
seen them
that
feeding
way.
in the
I
creek.
have seen them feeding
Yeah.
in the creek, yeah.
But
Redwoods
usually like
also are there.
Orlando wetlands, though, probably
Mhm.
is better, I would think. I mean, I get asked that a lot, and I'm like, look in any ditch on the side of the road. They seem to really like the dirty water. So
Yeah.
I just never saw one sitting up on, I think there were two of them in that pine tree. Went to leave and I'm like,
Yeah, that's cool. And
okay, what is the name of the bird with the hidden head near the end of the slides?
okay, hang on. Near the end.
Hidden head.
I think it was probably that Chuck's or that one or the other one.
By the way, Sam, could you distinguish how you could tell a chucks from a whip?
Well, Barb Taylor and I were discussing this at length while we were looking at the Whipperwill last week. If you look at the undertail of this bird, which is a chucks, it's like more of a solid white, those long coverts. And it's hard to tell from this photo, but the chucks is a much larger, chunkier bird. And what's crazy is normally for any nightjar, you don't really see them sitting up like that. You always see them like the Whipperwill shot where it's laying flat, and it makes it even harder. They all nightjars, which is, you know, the nighthawks, like the overseas, like the frogmouth, which is a really cool bird. If you haven't Google that, it's pretty crazy. But this is a chucks, and you know, they sound similar, they look similar. They're in the nightjar family, but definitely the white underneath is what threw it for me, identifying this Whipperwill. And also the head on the on this bird, the chucks, is normally flatter when it's laying flat. Again, this is kind of an anomaly to see them sitting up like that. They all seem to kind of relax and lay flat. And I think that Whipperwill, nobody's seen it since I saw it last week. And I think it might have just been passing through. But a good place to hear them. I don't ever really see these birds, but Hal Scott is really good. Kathy actually heard both out at the end of the Lake Apopka Drive by parking at the exit and walking in before sun up, and same with the Sand Lake parking at Wacaga Springs State Park. We were getting both of those birds and woodcock, which was kind of a holy trifecta, which is kind of cool. So
Thank you. Kathy, can you go forward to the whip?
it's right before that one, I think. There.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see how the undertail coverts on this have more of a pattern to it. There's a little bit of white there, but not as much. And as I said, the size difference, it's not huge, but like Barb and I were like Googling pictures and stuff as we're staring at this bird. And there was a guy holding a chucks, and it was almost like a bullfrog. Like it was just this big, chunkier bird. And this one was probably only 7, maybe 8 inches long, laying like that. So, but they're very, very similar and very, very tough to tell. And if anybody isn't familiar, there's a Facebook group from the ABA called What's This Bird? And I use it almost every day. And it's, you know, you should never be embarrassed about asking for help. And like I said, there's a lot of us that do it every day. But what's interesting is with the Whipperwill, Barb and I decided it was a Whipperwill. We were still going back and forth. I was sending it to Paul Huber, who's an eBird reviewer and probably the best birder around. And, you know, we were all kind of going back and forth on it. But then when you post a bird that's really tough to ID on What's This Bird, it kind of goes eerily silent. Like I think John Groscott from over on the West Coast was the only person that actually had like a valid statement. Otherwise it was, hey, great picture, or they liked I got like 50 likes on the picture, but I was asking for confirmation on my ID. And it was one of those things where they're like, I'm not sure either, is kind of what you pick up on. So, but it's a really good Facebook group if nobody's on it. It's you know, the whole ABA area, not just Florida, but it's really helpful. So
Juanita posted the seasonal thing that we see the whips in the winter and the chucks in the summer traditionally,
for sure. And I think that chuck was at the end of April, because, you know, summer is basically February to November for us. So, but yeah, I agree completely with with those seasons. But it's, you know, this time in early March is kind of like we got all of them at the same time. You know, the woodcocks hung out through December. Up through, I haven't heard them or seen them reported the last month or so, but they were, at one point we had all 3 of them there during the week. So it's
we
kind
just
of
need
cool.
nighthawks. That would be fun.
Terrence was asking, is there a rookery in the park?
Not that I know of. Larry, have you seen things in the past with nesting herons or anything?
Not I mean, there's nesting birds, but there's not like a place where there's a whole bunch of them, like at the wetlands or something.
Or yeah, Craft Azalea Gardens has a
Yeah.
big rookery.
Of the egrets and crane.
Yeah, there's a lot of rookeries right now lakeside out at Lake Apopka. If you're out there,
And the roseate spoonbills are nesting out at the wetlands now. So
yeah, wetlands, true.
And I think Juanita was asking if you saw both the chucks and the whippoorwill on the same day.
No, unfortunately, no, and I probably would have, my head would have spun off. So, like I said, I think that Chuck's was last year at the end of April, but this one here, the whippoorwill, was about 8 days ago.
Mhm.
So, and that was Creekside. There's a palm tree that goes over the path, and like I said, I was kind of more looking for owls or anything else, and taking my time, and I looked up and couldn't believe it. So.
Terrence has a question about the black-throated blue, being from Louisiana, so he hasn't seen it. And that makes sense because as I've learned it, they live for the winter in the Caribbean islands. So they just come right up through Florida. So that's why you'd miss them, Terrence.
Mm.
Yeah, I think they head north instead of left towards you, Terrence, and keep on trucking up towards Ohio and stuff. But we get them pretty thick in Mead for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And they're such a cool bird. And even the females with the little, I call it a little handkerchief pocket, little white, they're pretty cool.
Yes.
I think you're talking about that garden club last year when it was raining. I think it started raining a little heavier and I went down behind there under the trees, and that rain drove all the birds up on the top of the trees down underneath. It was like a mini fallout. It was
Yeah.
very beautiful. The Redstarts and the black-throated blues and black and whites and some other miscellaneous warblers. So sometimes bad weather isn't too bad, so.
Well, and the beauty of that park is it's small enough where you can pretty much do the majority of it in, an hour if you want it. So, like I said, when I park over at Warbler Corner, I kind of do it to make me go back to Warbler Corner and check it again. And you can almost hit all these spots twice. And one spot you go through and there's nothing there. And, you come back 45 minutes later and you've got 12 species. So.
Right.
It's
You always
pretty
want to look for the feeding flocks because that's when you're going to see the most things.
true.
Very good. Any more questions? And Beth has some comments that you can see a lot at Merrill Island too on Black Point Drive.
Yes.
Yep.
That's true.
Good stuff.
Very much so. Well, let's see what time. Oh, it's
Right
about
on time.
right on time. So just want to remind everybody that next week we're going to feature Fort DeSoto, which is also a hot spot for migration. And we'll give you a tour of that, where you can see both warblers and shorebirds and other things in between. So be sure to join us for that. If you want more information about any of our trips or the photo contest or the bird-a-thon, just check out our website.
Very good. And one of the comments someone who had asked, is the park walkable and not too far to walk? And it is actually a very good park. And because it is kind of a central, like a community park, they do have like benches every so often. So you can kind of take a little break if you need to, if it's getting tiring. And Terrence wanted to know what day is the bird-a-thon? Kathy, do you want to repeat that?
I'm
It's,
typing it too. Sorry.
Yeah, here, let me go back. You can pick, this year we're doing a little bit different. Oh, I don't know why I'm not being able to do this. You pick a 24-hour period, April 10th or April 11th. We're giving 2 days in case of weather. Sometimes the first day is not good. So this way we have the option. There it is. So either April 10th or 11th, but it does need to be in Florida. So if you're from another state and you can't come to Florida, you can just support us by sponsoring the Bird-A-Thon or sponsoring a birder or just pledging. You can just pledge, of a nickel per bird or whatever you want to do. We appreciate it.
And yeah, and that 24-hour period can overlap both days.
Yeah, as long as it's 24 hours, that's fine. You can start 10 at one day and end at 10 a.m. the next day. We definitely want, let's go let's listen. And it can be seen or heard. You don't have to, see it. So those great horned owls and the Chuck Will's widow, you can go find a place to listen for them.
Mhm.
And go to the next slide, Kathy, and let's just reiterate about the photo contest. Whoops.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, this is a big deal for Orange Audubon. It's our 33rd year of this contest. And we really love fostering the youth photography category. So if you've got any young people in your family that like to take pictures, please have them enter. It's like $2 a picture entered for the youth. And as Kathy said, the main thing is no non-native elements in it.
Now, does that work for like a snail kite with a band?
I think that won't be acceptable.
Yeah, I think it is. I think you're right. I remember asking like years ago asking about that. So, and like invasive snails and stuff like that, like like a non-native tree.
Mm-hmm.
So crazy. It's good though. It's cool.
Right. Or a heron eating a non-native fish. So.
Right.
Yeah, they rejected a picture once of I think it was a burrowing owl with a Cuban atoll in his mouth.
Right. That's crazy. That's so cool.
But you do have a chance to redo if the screening committee finds something man-made in your picture. You have the option to resubmit if you've already done it. Yep.
I love that idea. It's super cool. So.
And Teresa just said this, that there's 1,350 in prizes.
Nice.
Wow.
I've never done it. I think I might have to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, the pictures are great. If you want to look at old winners, you can go onto the online and look at the old ones, but they're really
I have to
nice.
do that.
Very, very nice.
And we have an awesome narrator. So it's a very enjoyable program.
Teresa does a great job. All right.
Okay. Well,
Thank-
happy birding to everybody. Go out and
Yep, happy birding.
some migrants the next few days. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye. All right. Let's see here. Chat. All right, let me escape this.